alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is the Muslim Engineer, aka Big Turk, and I'm here with a special guest today and for the following episodes.
Assalamu alaikum. I will go by Big Bang here, just to play off of Big Turks.
Yeah, mashallah. So today, this is a very, very interesting episode, I would personally say, and I think Big Bang can also agree that today we're going to talk about artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence has been sort of plaguing the internet now after ChatGPT for the last 3 or 4 months made ChatGPT 4.0 public. We've seen a big rise in a lot of artificial intelligence, and it pretty much turned everything upside down on its head. But what's funny is that no one actually knows what AI is, and for the very few people that know what AI is, it's sort of hard to grasp their head around what ChatGPT is doing and how big the implementations can actually be. So to start off, what is artificial intelligence, right? And I think the easiest way to boil it down is that artificial intelligence is just it's a non-algorithmic way to process data. That's all it is, right? Previously, for anyone who is in the computer science field knows that we used to develop, and we still do develop, very, very large algorithms to process data. For example, let's say you have a bunch of points in space. A lot of car technologies now, what they're using different scanning algorithms to scan the points in 3D space, right? And what they do there is they use an algorithm, which means that it's just going through a list of steps, and at the end, it's outputting stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So what this means is that what artificial intelligence does is it sort of brute forces a solution, if that makes sense. And what this means is that you pretty much let it test every single thing out as it possibly can until it eventually sets up an internal algorithm itself. But this algorithm is dynamic, right? Most people, if anyone has done coding, they know that if an error pops up, they really won't know how to, the code most of the time doesn't know how to react. So you have to do stuff like a try catch in Java, for example, where you have to make sure that if something does go wrong, we catch it. But with an algorithm, or specifically with an artificial intelligence, it sort of learns on its own what it needs to do and what doesn't need to do. So from there, because of that, that would mean that it's a lot more self-sufficient in the sense that, we don't need necessarily a programmer to interfere with it. We just need a programmer to set it up in a learning space to actually learn. And that's what they actually did with ChatGPT. So ChatGPT is a language model, as everyone has heard. But what does this mean, a language model? A language model, all it really does is it takes, the OpenAI, people who made ChatGPT, they took the entire internet and then shoved it into an artificial intelligence to learn the language. And there is a lot of information on the internet. I don't know if people know. Very, very, very large. And what happened was, after cramming all of it in, they released their ChatGPT 1.0, which was a very internal service, and it was a very rough way of communicating. There have been attempts in previous years to have a chat AI. I don't know, have you heard some of them?
Yeah.
Have you heard of some of those?
Yeah, they've made many attempts, and I guess it was more unrefined compared to what we have now.
It all blew up in flames. Have you heard of the one with, what's it called? With the one made by Microsoft, and a bunch of people from 4chan flooded it with Nazi propaganda and stuff. And then from there, it started to become a separate 4chan-based red-pilled entity than what it was originally designed to be. And, it's part of... You didn't know about that one? Yeah. So there was... yeah. So, and this is something very, very common now, especially with the new Bing robot. Bing robot, I've heard it's really aggressive. I haven't tried it myself, and I kind of don't want to, but it was threatening this one random guy who was like, I know who you are, Joseph something, and it's like, oh, shoot. Oh, yikes. And it's like, oh, well. But yeah, most of the time is that a lot of the times when these were attempted, it sort of was a garbage in, garbage out situation. So for people who are in the programming, this is something everyone has heard. Garbage in, garbage out. If you put garbage into a program, it's going to give you garbage outputs that you don't like. Here, we don't have we don't have garbage inputs. We have kind of base inputs, and talent is a based output, right? But specifically that because in a lot of these AI bots, they could control the input. What happened is that okay, the input isn't controlled. So because the input isn't controlled, anyone and obviously the degenerate people who chill online, what do? They have nothing better to do, so they just want to put in like the most random trolling stuff possible. And because they do that, the output isn't what they expected, right? So ChatGPT or OpenAI, what they specifically did was they made it an internal thing. So if you ever try going on the ChatGPT now and you don't really do anything and just ask it random questions, anything that it considers like not good will actually outright tell you like, yeah, I can't really make a joke about it. And then we'll talk more about it.
So it knows its limits.
Yeah, because again, it was the data
There's
was an
somebody to find it, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah, basically.
specifically the OpenAI developers, right? Because now they could control what they could put into the AI, and I think they realized that after the whole the Microsoft Open Chat AI, they realized, yeah, you know what? Maybe we can actually control the data that goes in. We'll talk again more about it, so keep watching for seeing what actually goes on with the actual communication thing and how you could possibly jailbreak it so you can't. However, ChatGPT again is really really interesting because of how some of the stuff is very secretive, but they're very open with how they developed it. Right? They initially started with GPT 1.0, and then from 1.0 it jumped to 2.0, and then 3.0 was when it was, I believe, released to the public. And 3.0 was a paid service, and I think there's a YouTuber who made a video called Breaking YouTube or something, where they simply just recorded or had an AI read off an AI script made by ChatGPT 3.0. And we're not AIs. We're not AIs. I'm just saying that he made a video like that, and it actually turned out pretty well. I think it was okay. I mean, like you could tell it was true, but this was 3.0. 4.0, as I don't know if many people have tried it, but it's significantly better when it is spitting out outputs, and this has actually opened up a lot of door for a lot more AI tools that are related to it. But speaking of AI tools, before we jump into some more different things AI does, it's interesting to actually talk about prompt engineering. Have you heard of that before?
I have not. You want to explain that?
Yeah, so prompt engineering, the idea behind it is that there's a specific way that we as a user can actually structure what we input it to get what we specifically want. For anyone that's tried ChatGPT, whenever you tried writing something, sometimes it doesn't give you the output you want. So for example, if you're writing code, sometimes ChatGPT is annoying and it doesn't put in a code block, and you have to try for like 4 different messages back to back. Hey, put in a code block, and then it gives you the same things. Hey, put in a code block. Hey, it gives you the same thing, and it repeats and repeats and repeats. Or sometimes we want to make it like a chat assistant, right? But what's problematic with the chat assistant is that ChatGPT sometimes forgets or doesn't necessarily understand like the situation or something. It just ups and deletes and just forgets about the previous conversation and just does its own thing, right? So what chat prompt engineering does is that it pretty much is able to, in a nutshell, make ChatGPT instead of the ChatGPT into some sort of like a character, right? It's like a lot of the ChatGPT, like there's a lot of the things tell you to try to put it into a character, but in a nutshell, it's a way of engineering a prompt so you get an exact output the way you want. And I think it's in my honest opinion, when I looked into it, there is like it is probably infinitely more useful than what we learned in English class in high school. But
So it's definitely it's basically like setting more parameters to input from the user that's requesting information, right? Like
yeah, exactly. Okay. And the way they do it is actually a lot more interesting, right? Because previously, whenever we have an algorithmic piece of code, we have it so that the algorithm needs specific inputs and outputs. However, with an artificial intelligence, specifically like GPT, we don't need values, we need a situation to describe it, right? So it's become more abstract, and it's also really interesting because in the beginning of coding, we had it where a lot of the languages were very low level languages. And what low level means is that we had it so that it was closer to binary computer programming, right? And how the computer is able to organize its resources accordingly, which was like what C++ is. And we got into medium level languages like Java, where Java was more human, easy to understand, has an easier interface. The code looks more clean to understand. And now we're actually at the point where we're coding. I'm going to put a big air quotes on coding, or where we're getting an output from some sort of artificial intelligence, depending on the dynamic, like human, like writing style of our prompt, which is actually very interesting to think about how far that sort of writing has come. And it's interesting, especially when people who want to set up businesses. Actually, we'll get more into that, but for business setting up, it might prompt engineering might actually be a future job that people can worry about. And other than that, AI has jumped away from just writing models. It's jumped into art creation, especially I think it started a lot with art creation, right?
Yeah, I've seen the AI art making.
Yeah. It's interesting because did you ever like imagine like what AI would initially first take over? Like if we were to think back 10 years beforehand and you're like, okay, I believe AI is definitely going to take over this one field first. I don't think anyone would answer art, right?
No,
No.
they would think something more of like not art, but like something more technological, maybe something more industrial.
Yeah, industrial. I was thinking a lot of people
Kind
that
of
I've talked, mechanical, industrial. When I was looking into it, they were saying that a lot of the artificial intelligence experts believe that okay, the very first thing artificial intelligence will take over is actually those like hard I don't and it's not blue collar, but it's below blue collar, like hardworking.
right,
Uh,
exactly. Like replacing
yeah, the
assembly
labor jobs.
workers.
Yeah, replacing the labor jobs, right? And then we would think, okay, then it's going to take over the desk clerks, right? And then from the desk clerks, it might take over a lot of big industry, right? Like for example, like I don't know, let's say the printing industry, right, where it's like so big automation factories will be taken over by artificial intelligence, and then it would be the engineers who were taken over and completely removed out of the picture. And then finally, the last thing we think about is like, yeah, artificial intelligence can never do something creative or make artificial intelligence art, right? It's like
Which
that seems
almost
super
makes it seem
preposterous.
more, yeah. I mean, it makes it feel like it's really replacing humans at this point. If it could go as far as
Yeah,
something like art, or who knows what's next? Maybe politics, making our policies,
politics, definitely. That's
medicine.
also even more scary, yeah. But what's kind of interesting that I find is that we initially thought that it was the very last thing that it would take over was actually the arts, right? And it's literature. Or what was the very first thing it actually took over? Arts. I believe the very first like artificial intelligence the public had access to. I think the very first thing general
Well,
like
well,
when I remember,
if you think about it, and this is gonna
yeah,
be corny, but if you this is gonna be really corny, but if you think about it, I mean, art is in part of spelling artificial intelligence.
yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Sorry.
no, 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 all good. But like, even then, it's like it's funny to think how AI really subverted expectations of everyone, where it was actually taking a majority of the art away from people, right? Like initially, artificial intelligence, I believe it did some very, very minor, um, blue collar jobs, which was like data analyst stuff, right? And even that was like in university settings, right? Like testing settings. So you could technically argue, okay, well, data analysts came first, like, yeah, duh. Like, it's easier to organize numbers than it is to understand pixels and hexadecimal numbers and stuff like that for art. But publicly, what got AI really popular was art. And I don't know if you remember, like 4 or 5 months back, you remember the trend where everyone was putting their face through it,
Yeah.
like an AI. Yeah, isn't it? It's like it's funny because that's where around the peak for artificial intelligence became problematic,
And that's what
right?
I was gonna.
Is
That's what
because
I was gonna tell you, because this is things like deep faking and what was
yeah,
that? There, I think there was movies out there too. And then where that app, there was an app. I think it was called Reface.
yeah, reface, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And like, and that's not all. You think about where it kind of started. Like, if you ever had like Google Photos, where it recognizes faces and then it organizes them. So it all started with like facial recognition, and then
yeah,
slowly it learned and evolved from just recognizing to actually recreating or understanding the different, dimensions of the face. And if it's like
mm-hmm.
creating human like art, or and then maybe it moved on to like foliage and animals. Is that that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Uh, sorry,
Yeah, so go
off
on.
tangent. But yeah, I think that's where it started. Like you can slowly see it evolve over the last couple of years, quite
Yeah,
from recognition to the creation itself.
yeah, definitely. And I think that's like kind of interesting to think about, right? How it took around. Wow, what was CAPTCHA? When did CAPTCHA introduce pictures into their verifying human things? It's been a while, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know how I don't know how that, but it's been a while since they started introducing those photos into CAPTCHA. And I know a lot of people they actually buy that information and help it develop AIs for picture recognition and stuff, right? Where CAPTCHA actually sells your correct answers, which is funny to think about, but it's true. They actually sell your correct answers to artificial intelligence developers, where they're able to actually plug that data in and have it have a good way of recognizing humans. But what's actually even more scary is that an AI tool that's made to resemble voices now. I don't know if you've been on. I don't know if you use Instagram, Big Bang, but in online now, there's this big meme going around from American presidents, pretty much smack talking each other, but it's all artificial. It's like those PS4 like chat room type things, where people get really salty and they get really graphic. Let's say, um, they pretty much made it so that because there's a lot of voice of the presidents, right?
Right.
There's
You
this
have enough
AI. There's a lot of samples. It's called. I believe there's people they call it resemble AI. Resemble AI, where I was looking into it the other day, where if you have the more samples, the better, pretty much. But if you have at least like a minute to 2 minutes of someone speaking, they can completely replicate your voice, right? And this partly plays into the idea of the AI apocalypse, which I know you deemed, but I'm going to introduce it, where it's interesting to see that more and more AI tools are starting to come in to
They're
these sorts of things, and it's being
they're
like,
slowly evolving. Like that's the trend that I'm seeing. Like not just the art, but even like you said, the voice recognition also over time. Because like people they've started using like these voices to. Yeah, have you seen those YouTube videos? They're like YouTube is like populated with these
yeah,
where you have this random like generic video like everybody just copies the format and
yeah,
reading off some kind of script like why
yeah,
is dragon fruits good for you, why are strawberries good for you, something like that, and it's just reading it from an AI voice, like it's just
yeah,
reading the text, and then that just improved over time. And they could even like produce music, I think at some
yeah,
I think I heard that a couple of weeks ago
yeah,
where AI is creating music,
yeah. It's kind of scary to think, but
which is another form of art.
yeah, definitely. But what's actually scary is that people are using it maliciously now too. I don't know if you heard about the Joe Rogan problem where someone recorded Joe Rogan. It was a really badly done AI thing, but like they recorded Joe Rogan talking to some uh health guru. I forgot his name. Allahu Adam. But he was like, "Oh yeah, guys, you should buy these testosterone supplements. They're so strong, and they're on Amazon, and I use them all the time." But it was like a really grainy version, so everyone knew Joe Rogan didn't say it. But what's scary, huh?
It was AI.
It was AI, yeah, obviously. So what happened was that it's funny to think that now we're gonna have to worry about like even the ads we get if they're trustable, right? And what's even scary religiously is that what if someone copies the voice of a scholar, some deviant, Allahu Alam, copies the voice of a scholar and makes there be a fatwa given based off
That's
that voice?
and that's gonna be that is something that we are definitely gonna bring up
Yeah,
down the line in this
that was
podcast.
like so.
Um, so stay tuned
Yeah,
for that.
definitely. And even then, artificial intelligence, what's also worrying is a lot people were complaining, especially in my university. A lot of the software engineers are kind of they're laying bricks, as we say, but because they're realizing that a lot of the coding stuff is being done by a lot of these artificial intelligence, and it only tends for them to get stronger and stronger, right? If the input is given right enough, again with prompt engineering, if someone learns really, really good prompt engineering,
That was
someone could probably, yeah, someone could like with the proper of prompt engineering could get an entire project complete in a day compared to the month of software development it could normally take. right?
I actually saw a video on that where it would take like days or weeks to create a project where it would only take 3 hours or even less, maybe no, I think it was 3 minutes. Within 3 minutes,
10
like
minutes,
created
yeah.
an entire coding structure, and it was just like so. I mean, them laying bricks, I think that's justified because you can see.
Definitely. I mean, I was going to talk more about it in a different episode, but I feel like the whole software engineering thing is so new. Like the entire field is so new. It's like people make it seem as it's like this very, very stable job when boom, chat AI, suddenly, guess what, bro? Your entire degree is suddenly compressed to 3 hours of work for an AI. So it's interesting to see that like these jobs are being taken over, and I want to see like with the introduction to photo understanding, because chat AI, one of the limitations it has, other than it being limited to the data of 2001, is 2021, sorry, is that it can't do picture processing, right? So for anyone that might be in like these fields like electrical engineering, computer engineering, even a little bit of chemical engineering, or even mechanics, where there's diagrams, right? And ChatGPT can't analyze the diagrams. However, the second they implement, or if they do implement, picture recognition, it could be very, very dangerous for even my field, which is electrical engineering, where if I submit, like, here's a circuit, right? Analyze a circuit for me. This thing could have it done in like 30 minutes, right? Or even less, where you can even a, write a circuit for it or ask it to develop a circuit for you. And then you could just continue asking it for you to make it more efficient and make it cheaper, or do things that would normally take an electrical engineer some time to sit down, organize, simulate, design, yada, yada, yada. The chat GPT could be like, okay, I can do this like that. Snap of a finger. It completely removes the job. So I feel like
A question like, is it really making humanity's life easier, or is it really gonna make things worse for us down the line?
definitely, but it's also part of the it's I don't know it's not the it's a specific principle that I also wanted to talk about, where it's that how much power should we give to artificial intelligence, and whether, what are the actual like limits we should draw. So I don't know, there was this sci-fi book that everyone refers to, but and it refers to the three laws of robotics. It's a sci-fi novel. Everyone has heard it.
I've heard, well, not the book, but I've heard about like the three laws. I'm not sure what exactly they are, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know there are three
It's
laws
like
that they
the
can't.
robots can't. So like robots cannot hurt a human. Robots must listen to humans,
That
and
makes sense.
robots cannot listen to humans if it breaks the first two rules, type thing, right? That's the general sum up of it. But the funny thing is that everyone loves using it, but no one realizes is that it's from a sci-fi book, bro. Like I don't want to be the mess.
What if they get rogue, or get hacked or compromised? That's that's
That is scary, but the thing is that that's an introduction of robotics and artificial intelligence together, right? It's that the question becomes is like how much is like should robots only be stuck algorithmically in where they can only follow a specific process like car factory type things, or should we even have robotic assistants with human level artificial intelligence to begin with? I personally don't see a need for me to have a robotic assistant, right? Or anyone, frankly. It's like what? You're a billionaire, you can't afford another human, right? It's like if you want to land, you're like, oh no, but the human has problem errors, yada yada yada. They have to take sick leave, paternity leave, yada yada yada. Well, yeah, okay, sure, but like, are you really that like worried about having an assistant follow you around all the time like that? And the worst case scenario, just use an artificial intelligence to organize your schedule for yourself, then, right? Where it's like, for example, there's this thing called Motion AI, which literally you just ask it for it to organize your schedule for you, and it does all your assistant. It pretty much does all your organizing for you, right? So even then, it's that pushing is like, why should we push the envelope? I genuinely don't see a reason for anyone to be like, oh yeah, we should make a human like thing. Why? So we can push the envelope of reality. Why? Like, why would you want to do that? There's like people exploring this idea with this. I think it's called Detroit something. Forgot the name of the video game. I never played it, alhamdulillah, but like it's about like people like these things called androids, and they pretty much have human level intelligence or above human level intelligence. And like obviously people are saying, oh yeah, this is what we could see in the future. We're merging robotics and artificial intelligence together, and this is something you can expect in the future. But like I highly doubt it. You know what I mean? It's like there's obviously stuff like Boston Robotics designing stuff, and even then, it's like I don't see the purpose of it for a civilian life introducing artificial intelligence, right? It's like, do you really want artificial intelligence? Because we have to look at the extremes of situations when we look at these things, right? Because it's always easy to say, like, oh yeah, surely no one would do that, right? Surely no one will use it to the extreme. But guess what? Humans are peoples of extremes. So what I'm worried about specifically is that if we do develop these technologies, how far would we push the envelope about how much of these technologies take control over human life, right? Like, we could obviously say, oh, it's so good, our farming would be done by robots and we won't have to worry about anything, right?
It's already being done by robots in Japan.
It's already been, yeah. Even then,
I've seen it. The robots were growing peppers.
really,
Yeah, and it basically the way. I mean, it's not perfect yet, right? It's not like a human walking around, but the way that it was moving was it was using like tracks
yeah,
of like kind of like those cable cars,
yeah,
and it used photo recognition, I guess, or some kind of AI processing to recognize that this pepper is ripe or it's not ripe, and it would pick it if it was ripe.
yeah.
I think it was ripe, like a certain color. If it sees it's a certain color, it would pick it. If not, if it's like green, like really green, then it would just leave it alone.
Interesting. And I feel that is pretty interesting. But what I'm worried more about is that, okay, what about wars or like police or stuff like that, right? It's like you will like the thing that's interesting, especially when it comes to these sorts of military forces or thing, is that a lot of the time they really try hard to destroy the humanity of these people that work for them, right? Have you seen the American Marine training stuff? There's been a lot of like controversy around it. I think the latest controversy was that they gassed here the platoon of Marines or sorry, Navy SEALs. It was Navy SEAls, correct? Marines, Navy SEAls, or any of the military branches. They gassed them like with tear gas, and they forced them to sing so that all the gas went into their insides. And this is a part of a way to psychologically like make them subservient to their higher ups, right? And also to make them stronger. And what happens is that no matter how hard they try to break it, a lot of the time it shines through. And there's a lot of Vietnam War accounts where they were trained to be ruthless, but humanity shined through in the end, right? But what's worrisome is that, can you imagine, especially for Muslims who are already somewhat of an undermined community, one day the Christian extremists, they finally take power of the American Senate or something, and they want to have all the Muslims arrested. And instead of having those like cops who have a little bit of humanity letting people slide by, right? What if they were just robots, right? And these are stronger than humans, right? Imagine something that can sense you through walls, something that has access to every single CCTV all in one robot body, has impeccable aim, and has the sight that can see definitely farther than a human, right? Or for example, even worse, can you imagine an invasion with that sort of technology? The country would be done in an instant. Like, you can't do anything. What, you want to shoot a robot? What is that gonna do? Yeah, you might snip some wires. Oh no, my left leg doesn't work on the robot. What will it do? It can just be a sentry turret then.
Grow out some wheels out of its back or something and start.
Yeah. We'll let in the Terminator. Terminator. Yeah, we're pushing the envelope, but these are I'm just generally saying is that where should we draw the line? And as Muslims, right? What does Islam say about this, right? It's like, does Islam say, again, something we should really think about bringing up the scholars, what does Islam say about artificial intelligence? Like, what should we take from the Sharia and compliances of the Sunnah and the Quran that it says about this stuff, right? Like, should the Muslim Ummah eventually learn how to implement these sorts of AIs in their militia or in their cops, right? Or should this be something left purely for the humans, right? Even scarier is that, we have these artificial intelligences. Should we have them as judges and rulers? Again, remember how I said, it's very easy for someone, especially who was a judge, to just know all the bylaws, right? Or know all the laws, right? And then just give you a sentence based off it, right? It's like this person was speeding, therefore $100, but does not. But it would be very difficult for it to account for like socioeconomic status, the way it's living, whether it was an accident or not, right? It is going to be even more interesting because you would need to feed it a lot of case studies, right? And my question then becomes: is there enough case studies that we can feed it so that it gets to that level of human compassion, or is that just something that's out of our reach?
I mean, it wouldn't be organic either way.
Yeah, exactly.
And you wouldn't. I don't think you could ever feed artificial intelligence enough to fully have the emotional intelligence of a human being.
I would say so, but I mean, it depends on the amount of data. There's an abhorrent amount of data. It would not be exactly to say, like, what's the love? What if it's close enough? Like, do you think it could reach close enough?
Maybe, but like it's not gonna be like genuine. You know what I mean? That
That's fair.
it wouldn't be genuine. Like you could probably give the illusion of compassion. You know, it would all be an illusion, really. You would get a robot with a human face, silicon skin, and maybe the tone and the a kind tone, maybe, right? It would sound motherly and nurturing, but at the end of the day, it wouldn't be genuine. It would just be metal and wires and
Yeah.
zeros and ones, and a lot, like a whole cloud database behind it.
Yeah.
That's what it would be.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I got a question too. Is that there's a lot more AI tools coming out, and my question to you also becomes like, do you think that like we as Muslims should try to gatekeep any of the AIs we find for ourselves? So, for example, hypothetically, let's say I found a research AI tool, right? Or I found an like some sort of AI tool that helps make a website type thing, right? Do you think that as Muslims we should try to gatekeep this to ourselves in the sense that like it obviously isn't our invention, right? But if we find it, do you think it would be a good idea to just keep it to ourselves and share it very sparingly with people, or do you think that us as Muslims and as people of truth, we should try to be our best to support humanity and try to give everyone that information that we learned, right? Because I think that what happens, especially because we live in a capitalistic society, we think of me, I, right? In the sense that like it's my job, it's my thing, I found it, I should keep it for myself and I should exploit it as best as I can, right? And then make myself have the upper edge amongst people, right? Especially when it comes to when I was telling you about the with ChatGPT and the website creation, right? There's a lot of freelance Islamic website designers, right? And I think that's their job, right? They seek knowledge inside Allah Madarik, and then they do website development during the night times, right? So, do you think that like it would necessarily be fair to gatekeep it, or do you think it's more of just like a it's like we should share it whenever someone asks, or like it should be like whenever we're given this technology, we need to tell everyone about it because it's our job as Muslims to try to boost everyone around us. What do you think?
So I think I need an expansion on that question. So basically, what I'm trying to understand is, do you mean when they like discovered by like something
Yeah, yeah.
a
Like
non-Muslim made, or something that they created themselves?
both. Let's say both for now.
Um, Either way, the way that I see AI and ChatGPT and all that is, first of all, it's a gray area. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna deny that. So any answer I say would probably not be the right answer. Ever. Who
Yeah.
knows? Hello, Adam. But um,
What?
what I think is that it's pretty much a tool. It, it's
Yeah.
it's it's as good as a knife that you use to cut your apples and oranges with, or your
Mhm.
whatever you for cooking. Whereas you can use that very same instrument to cause harm. So it depends on intention and nia and how you use it and what you use it for. Like if you're going to use it to genuinely, bring improvement to the ummah, then sure, why not?
Yeah.
But you have to understand the limits, and you have to be aware that this is not an organic thing. This could be dangerous if used the wrong way. Um,
Hmm.
and furthermore, if you think about it, we've already been using it in one way or another. I mean, it
Yeah.
was a primitive form. Using Google search itself, or Bing search, or whatever you want to call it, using a search engine, that's a form of AI, right? Kind of, not exactly.
not exactly. It's a form of art
But
algorithms. But yeah, go on.
but it was like the predecessor, kind of. Like I mean, if you look for good stuff on Google, then you
Of course, no. Yeah, exactly.
come across bad things. Or I mean, what other tools are there? Like you can use YouTube. Okay, let's go with YouTube.
Yeah.
It's not AI, but what are we doing? What are other Muslim people platform owners doing? They're trying to bring dawah, they're trying to bring goodness to the ummah, and not only the ummah but also to all of humanity, because this is a form of introducing Islam and the truth to everyone. And in recent times, you can see in the last couple of years, it's been exponentially growing and catching fire, pretty much like the Amazon. So that being said, AI, it's really the same. If you're using it for good, I think it should be good. Gatekeeping wise, I mean, I think it's the same as, if you're teaching another Muslim how to code and become a software engineer, if you teach them the AI and the tools and make their job easier, then I think
Yeah.
it'll be the same concept, really.
Yeah, definitely. I think you put it in a really good way because I didn't really think of it like that. Is that it's a tool at the end of the day, right? Like no need to put a tool on a pedestal, right? It's like the same way a knife, especially you said it as well, and I like to use that analogy as well. The same way something that can cut fruit for a family can also destroy a family, right, and kill them. So I think it's like about the intention and how you use it. And speaking of that and how you use it unintentionally, it's like, in your opinion, do you think ChatGPT is a good thing for the Ummah? Or do you think it's something that we should worry about? What do you think? Like, just generally, what do you think is something good about the ChatGPT for
When
the
when
Ummah?
when something has the potential to do bad, I wouldn't say it's good. What I would say is it's, again, it goes back to being a tool. It is
Yeah.
neutral. It's a neutral object. Is it good for the ummah? If you use it with good intention and if you use it for good, then yes, it's good for the ummah because you can accomplish stuff with it. But at the end of the day, it's not going to be organic. It's not going to be genuine. And I believe there's more that we're going to cover on that regarding
Mhm.
like when it comes to Islam, yeah, and using ChatGPT. I don't know if you want to go into that now or
No, no, no. Firstly, I think that like Ummah wise, I think that it's a really, really good tool. Again, like you said, depending on how it uses it. But I think the good generally for the things that we use for the dunya, it outweighs the bad that it does for the dunya. If that makes sense, right? Purely in the sense of the dunya and how it can impact our lives in the dunya, I think it's a really, really good tool, especially because a lot of Muslims have been pushing entrepreneurship, right? It's like, hey, bro, you should be an entrepreneur. You should be an entrepreneur, right? And a lot of the time, when you're trying to get into entrepreneurship, what's the hardest part is taking the first step, right? And organizing yourself and everything. But guess what? ChatGPT now has and continues to develop these stuff for you.
and one of the reasons that Muslims are pushing for entrepreneurship now is because it opens up things like time for yourself, for your family, for the deen, to have time set aside to worship more, to be able to, let's say, for example, pray there on the time of prayer rather than having
Yeah.
to take off there, break, go out to Juma, or maybe you can just go from home instead of you have the 30 minutes break at work, you have to run, come back, you can't really get the full experience of like everything that the modern times brings. The more advancement we have, the more busy we get. And I think this can free up more time because now you're making things more streamlined and efficient, and you're freeing up more time. So if you automate some things, part of your entrepreneurial business, then you get more time because now you have this AI taking care of it for you. But on the flip side, you still have to audit it because again, it's not organic. You have to make sure it's not doing things on its own that you don't want it. So
Going on its own, yeah, exactly. I find it also a really good way of learning and seeking knowledge secularly, not Islamically, but secularly, because because assuming that they eventually get Chat GPT to the point where they're introducing knowledge to it, like modern day knowledge, right? And it's just keeping this knowledge. Imagine you want to learn about a specific subject, right? Like let's say you want to learn a new language or you want to learn Arabic, right? Arabic is constant throughout. You can have Chat GPT sit down with you and actually give you
have you
lessons
have you
and
tried
introduce
that?
it.
Have you tried that? Because I know you want to learn Arabic.
It's currently,
Curious. Did you try it?
now, it does the Arabic alphabet, but
Okay.
it doesn't. The problem with it is that it's not as language model, right? So you can't see what you're learning and actually saying, right? Because if you're trying to learn Arabic for the Quran, you need to know if you're making the right sound. And if all that tells you is like, oh yeah, this is a fatha, it looks like this. This is how it looks like, and it's like, yeah, cool, but that's not actually tackling the problem, which is, how do I see it properly, and if I'm doing it like in a good manner. And
Not organic.
speaking, it's not organic. Exactly. It's just
You're not getting
replicating
that
the same
organic
effect.
experience that you would
Yeah.
from either having an actual teacher in front of you or even watching a recording of an actual teacher.
Even then, or I guess we should go on to it. And this is part of the bad is that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala in the Quran He talks about how He teaches the Muslims and how He says that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala teaches by the pen. Type. It's like it talks about how writing it out and reading it from a paper is much more beneficial, and it's how it's been done over the past 1400 years and even before, right? That's how humanity has.
Don't you think that's beautiful? Like Allah,
Yeah,
and He tells us how to do things like
yeah.
these, how to study.
Seek knowledge. Exactly. I think that Imran ibn Mansur also was talking about how the very first class they teach you when you go to Medina University, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give anyone who wants to have that experience the ability to do so. But it's the very first thing that they teach you is how to learn. It's like, because again, I don't want to say the Western teaching thing is good or bad. I'm just saying is that it's not fit for learning Islamic knowledge. It's a completely different beast that you're tackling, right? Because in the Western, when you're learning, right, you're learning how to regurgitate information, right?
Right.
And you can actually see that. I don't want to throw any shade, but a lot of people online, especially in like specific servers, they just regurgitate information. Type. It's like it's easy for someone to just, Google something and then copy paste a fatwa and then leave it at that, right? And that's what education teaches people. And I imagine you grew up with the system. That's how you think reality works, right? It's that they mold people's realities into thinking
Well,
that.
well, if you've I mean you've known me for some time now already.
Yes.
You know how I push for, like, for me it's all about being organic. I'm not talking about
Yeah.
flavor, but
Yeah.
just
Yeah. The
interact
organic experience. Yeah.
experience, because you can't just throw links at people and then
Yeah.
expect them to really like understand, and you have to sit with them. So I think like just chat GPT, like it's not going to be able to do that until, I don't know, if ever. It's not going to
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with you, and that's what some people don't. And I think it's not sticking for a lot of people. Is
it,
that it's
it's a
not?
nice starter, like if you want to
Yeah,
get your feet wet, but it's not, you're not going to get the most out of it.
yeah, and exactly. And this sort of reminds me of a quote where it says that one whose knowledge is confined to books and whose wealth is in the possession of others can neither use his knowledge nor wealth when the need for them arises. Right? And it's interesting because, right now, if you actually go to ChatGPT and you ask it for a very, very basic fatwa, it will give you a fatwa. Like right now, if you're online and you're listening to this and you're on your computer, go into ChatGPT or any talking tool and ask it whether alcohol is halal or haram for Muslims. And it will give you saying, it will give you Quran ayah, and it will also give you hadiths. And the funny part is it says we. So it's saying me, the user who asked, and also the AI itself, we Muslims are not supposed to. So is ChatGPT a Muslim now? It's just, the thing is that when data is collected online, and if you look at any of the fatwa websites, it always says we Muslims, right? So you can see that it's not, ChatGPT has no stance on Islam, but the data it pulls it from says we Muslims, so it recognizes that it's we Muslims and says that because it's somewhat brute forcing an answer based off all the fatwas it's seen or it's been fed. And what's interesting is that I'm very worried for this, and not because I don't think Muslims are going to use it for fatwas. Obviously, I think it's pretty obviously given. Like, who would use ChatGPT for a fatwa? What are you, crazy? Right? What I'm worried about more is that in the future, there's a lot of people who don't look at the Quran and Sunnah first when trying to do their projects or jobs. And I think I pushed on the last episode how Muslims, as a Muslim engineer, you need to look for Islamic ethics, right? Obviously, you have your secular ethics that you have to get your license, etc., etc. But you also add another layer of ethics that are not bounded by our original number of ethics, right? Islamic ethics. And one of the Islamic ethics is that a lot of people, I don't want to, I'm not saying every Muslim engineer is like that, but I'm just saying that it's common, or not common, but it tends to happen where Muslims, oh yeah, they make dua to get into engineering, they get into engineering, and then once they graduate, they throw all the Islamic ethics out the door. Right? It's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be and like they go into it with the mindset like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be a chemical engineer so I can help develop medicines to help people, right? And then they end up working for like Lockheed Martin developing nuclear weapons, yeah, right? And it's like, like these people who throw their ethics away after they become and they get this power, mind you, and they get this knowledge, and they build. Gotta pay the bills, but haram money isn't good. I'm just saying, is that if you feed haram to your family, there's no barakah in it. And what's interesting is that I worry about how people are gonna start developing these things for themselves, and not in a good way. What I mean by that is that they regurgitate information back to you, and they make it constantly regurgitate information back to you.
And part is a lot of people are not going to realize
exactly, and
what
and I don't want to be Imran Hussein. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's I don't want to be someone who talks about the people of the end times and is like, oh, the Dajjal is coming and coping about it. But I'm just saying that like it's interesting to see how this sort of technology that just came about is making it so that people are going to start thinking less and pondering, right? And what I find interesting is that previously, whenever we had a basic question for something, we would actually ponder over it, right? It's like, can you imagine like 100 to 200 years ago, when you wanted an answer for a question, you would have to think about it and go and hit the books, right? Like easy, for example, it's like, why is the sky blue, right? It's like now, previously, people had to think about it. Why blue specifically? They had to go to the library. They had to pick out scientific books about light and refraction, and then eventually do it. But now what?
fun
Now,
fact,
yeah.
fun fact. I believe back in the day, the sky was green, or at least that's what they called it.
Oh, really?
Their understanding of the color blue. So blue is not a natural color. It's not naturally occurring color, right? So it's an
Yeah.
artificial, the man-made synthetic color.
I didn't know about the oceans.
Oh, they call the ocean green.
Oh.
The green waters, the green sea, the green sky. It was not because blue and green, it's almost kind of the same shade. I mean, it's not the same shade, but it's like different shades of that dark color. So they would just think that blue is a different shade of green.
Pearls.
Now they have like actual blue coloring, which is it's synthetically produced. I don't know the exact science or history behind it, but I was looking into some linguistics, and that's what I've picked.
No, interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, not to take it off
Anyways,
topic,
yeah.
but
Interesting. Yeah. But again, it's that, people used to ponder and think about stuff when it comes to these things, right? And that's how also people thought about Islam and fatwas. I know I've heard, again, people can correct me, but I've heard that people, when they wanted to seek knowledge, they would like travel for a month from wherever they lived on camelback to go to a scholar and ask them one fatwa question, right? Like, can you imagine, like, nowadays, like,
no,
we
you
barely,
don't even get out of your
you don't even need to, you don't need to get out of your house for a fatwa. Like, you want a fatwa on something, well, there's definitely so to ask. But even that, you can even, like, if you're lucky enough, or not lucky, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses you enough to have a contact to a person of knowledge, they're a dial away. You could be sitting on your couch and you're like, so, I wonder what type of hardness of hearts there are, or like how does desires work. And you could call up a scholar or go onto YouTube and watch a video, and then boom, you have your answer. In fact, you can learn about and seek all this knowledge as you necessarily need. So I personally find it very, very interesting that I don't want to say we've been dumbed down and it's actually become difficult to ponder about answers and ponder about the Quran now because we've been so desensitized to it. And now I don't want to say that we've kind of lost the need to ponder about the Quran, but is the fact that you don't need to ponder as much anymore because all the answers are in all the tafsir books at your fingertips, right? It's like for one ayah now, you could just do a quick Google search of the ayah number and write tafsir interpretation, and you could find hours and hours of a single video explaining it to you, right? And you know what? It's awesome to get an explanation, but you're not pondering, you're not thinking, you're not coming to your evidences yourself.
critical thinking or
Yeah,
idea of these.
Exactly. And that's what's scary as well to a part of it. And I think that like a lot of what's it called? Silicon Valley people who work in Silicon actually started taking their phones away and didn't allow kids or any people in their house to use phones constantly is because the critical thinking skills of the Ummah have gone down significantly. I don't want to say that in a bad way. I'm just saying generally it's a noticeable change in the
Oh,
atmosphere, right?
and I can relate to this because me working in the IT, the information technology field myself, and recently I just had a kid, and we've been trying to raise him as organically as possible,
Yeah.
without the cell phone influence, without the iPad or the distractions or what they have now on TV. I don't know if you know about this, but they have this cartoon called Cocomelon now, and
Oh my
like
god,
everyone
no.
that I know, they just run this, and it's one of the most grossing, like the most profitable YouTube video out there because all they do is people just put it on for the kid and it just repeats over and over and playing the same nonsense and rubbish. And
Garbage in,
like
garbage out. I don't know what to tell
garbage in,
you.
garbage out.
Yeah,
Parents
exactly.
are not even there; they're not filtering. And then you have like these random ads that come on. From what I've heard, I haven't sat down and watched like more than 10 minutes of this, and I felt like I was gonna die. Um, you know, like and then the kids they're getting like these, they're getting brainwashed and whatnot. I don't know, but maybe the viewers would have a different opinion on this. But
Yeah,
what I've been trying to do is just not have all that early programming,
yeah,
this non-organic programming, and
yeah,
grow him, like help him get, like I just want to like raise him more organic, like not
yeah.
like I mean I didn't have phones when I was little, like not until I went to high school, right? And I did well. I mean I think I don't, mashallah. And now that fast forward like several decades, and like, it's like you know the times have changed so much. Like the way that you raise kids now,
Yeah,
it's different. So it's amazing, but it's also like dreadful at the same time. So I just wanted to like put that in
yeah, yeah,
for what you were saying.
yeah, definitely. And what I'm also worried about is the enemies of Islam and a lot of deviants. They love attacking specific scholars, right? Am I like so? What I'm worried about as well is remember how I was talking about resemble AI, where someone can replicate a voice,
In person, impersonate,
impersonate,
yeah.
replicate, and the thing
Right.
is
And you know what? Truth is that might happen. They might
might
do it.
honestly happen. And you know what's even worse is that a lot of the Islamic content on Instagram and stuff, it's not videos of the scholars. They
Stay away.
take they
Stay
they
away.
take. I'm not saying a type. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the general Islamic content on Instagram that I've seen. Right, is that it's not the face or a video of the scholar speaking, even though that can be replicated by AI as
Yeah.
well.
I've
But
seen
I'm just
that.
saying, it's that there's no face. Most of the time, even if it is a face of the scholar, they blur the eyes out and they make it a still picture, right? And what happens is that okay, previously you had to pay like a certain amount of money to actually replicate a voice with the body moving, right? But it will be really jittery and it wouldn't look good, right? But the thing is that the Islamic video template that people use, what's happened to it now is that it's so easy to fake an AI. Like Allah Alam, slander is one of the big sins of Islam, right? It's like there's backbiting and then there's the slander. There's a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ where he said that if you tell the truth about someone and it's not something they like and you don't say it while the person is there, it's called backbiting. And then the companions they said, Ya Rasulullah, what if they were saying the truth? Right? Something like that. I'm paraphrasing, right? And it's like if they don't lie, they see the truth, it's backbiting. If not, it's slander, right? So obviously it's one of the major sins. And what's even more scarier on top of this is spreading the slander around. Imagine someone gives a fatwa, right? Or someone makes an AI fatwa. And I don't know, I don't want to make an example because I don't want to change anything in the religion, right? But Allahu A'lam, let's say that they just make something up or they make a fatwa up. I don't know, let's say like it's like a very situational thing. And this fatwa was AI generated and they have some random skull. I can't think of a name off the top of my head, but some major just
Let's not name them. Let's just say some.
yeah, so some major scholar they take the voice off some of the recordings and then they just copy paste this video and then they make it say whatever the scholar's voice wanted it to say, and then from there this video then spreads like wildfire, right? And like hypothetically, this hypothetical scholar, of course, said something really slanderous, like I don't know, like, oh yeah, a woman age like milk type thing, because I know the Sunnah guy did that, he got kind of flamed for it, but um is that he says something like that, and then the scholar is now under fire, and the scholar like, I never said this. And he knows like, what's going on. And I think that in a nutshell, it's that like the tool can be used for a significant amount of that, especially because now we live in the age of misinformation and an age where Muslims aren't seeking knowledge, right? It's like if you were to honestly like talk to every single Muslim you meet and ask them, so what are you learning about Islam currently, right? And well, of course, I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying you're perfect. I'm just saying that, it's been really rare where previously people would constantly be learning something new about Islam, right? It's like, what book are you reading? What are you analyzing? How much Quran have you read? What chapter are you on? It's like up, and what most of the answers are now is like, well, I haven't touched my Quran since Ramadan. It's like, who's Ibn Taymiyyah? Who's Ibn Qayyim? Who are these scholars, right? What books are they? Why should I care? Or why should I read these books, right? And because of this, we live in an age of major misinformation where people are now, instead of going to the main sources and reading it and understanding themselves, the AI now and online in general is an age where misinformation is super rampant. For one question, there's like 50 answers, right? There's also a reason why the LGTB gang in Minecraft, I don't know if you remember the Jubilee video, right? Have you watched the Jubilee video of the Muslims and the liberal Muslims, conservative Muslims, whatever that jam is? I don't know. Like, there's no such thing as that, but they did a video and there was the air quotes liberal Muslims, right? We're all Muslims, as long as you're not breaking any of the thing Muslims. But they were the one-sided Muslims, and there was this girl who was advocating for LGTB stuff, right? Loved the flat screen TVs. I don't know what to tell you, but she was advocating for it and was quoting scholars. And like in the past, these sorts of scholars, they were so easy to like catch them and be like, hey, you can't say that, and burn their books or something because it's blasphemous. But now that stuff burns like wildfire, right? And it's also the reason why, I don't know if you know about this, in Christianity, the break from Catholicism to Protestant, there was a Protestant break. It happened because the printing press was invented in America. In Europe. Is that when the printing press was invented, and Martin Luther King Jr., not the African American fighter, but some white guy from the church,
Martin
right?
Luther.
I think it's Martin Luther King, but it was a junior. Junior was it's the same name, anyways. Allahu Alam. But the reason why it spread so fast was because
It's just Martin Luther, but anyway.
Yeah, Allahu Alam. I know. I hope everyone knows what I'm talking about, but is that it spread so fast because of the printing press, right? And now we have the biggest printing press known to man. So, the strongest and the fastest printing press known to man. So, I'm going to just leave off and say that for what we should worry about bringing to the scholars is about warning them about these technologies and telling them, hey, this information, this exists. This is a weapon. This exists out there. So be prepared for what might happen, right? On top of that, what we should also worry about is specific ruling things, right? Is that a lot of rulings that are based on niyyah, right? An intention, right? Would using AI necessarily be considered a blasphemous use of an intention? If I, for example, say I'm going to set up an AI so I can keep my ties of kinship and constantly contact them if they need anything, right? And whenever there's something important that comes up and it's not just typical like, I always say idle talk, but like the surface level stuff, right? It gives you a notification, you can hop in the chat room and talk yourself, right? It's like, would that be necessarily considered not with intention, but with intention? You know what I mean? Is that...
It wouldn't be organic and sincere, right?
Yeah. But the problem is that...
It gets the job across, but it's like, then you're not really getting that interaction, that exchange.
I'll tell you, it's not like, would the intention of these things also be like...
So Islam is not actually, I don't know if you know, but Islam is not just about intention, actually. So it's
about action.
There's two. I'm just gonna make it.
I'm
gonna make it valid. So the two is gonna be intention and implementation.
Yes.
Which is actually
Yeah.
This is what's that way to more fancy way to say action. It's
Yeah.
what your the way you intend it, like what you intend and how you implement it. So Islam is both actually. Yes,
Yeah.
there are some cases where even it's just intention that what is accepted. Like if let's say for example you have good intention and you die on the way, and some Allah will you know the hadith about the
Yeah, the man who died, and then he was told to leave the country, and he was one step away from halfway, and then Allah
exactly
Subhanahu to extend it. Yeah.
exactly. And that's a great example for intention. But then there's also implementation. Like his was a special case, but there's also implementation. Like, are you actually, you have the intention to do good, but are you're still alive, you're well, and you have the capability. Are you going out and doing? Are you being proactive about it, or are you just yeah, they should they should help the people in Turkey or in Syria, the hurt, the earthquake, like. But like, are you like doing anything? Like, I'm not telling you to go over there and fly over.
Pick an ass up yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, but like maybe do something at minimum for your level that you can
Yeah.
that you can do. You know,
But
so it's also implementation.
but then but then the problem arises is that, well, I'm implementing it, but my intention is also somewhat there. So then would it, even though it's not organic, would it still then be considered okay? And obviously, we as Muslims, we shouldn't fight for the bare minimum. But like, what's the floor with artificial intelligence being introduced to the picture where we can say, okay, it's fine with intention, or no, we have to keep it organic whatsoever. And then the problem is that scholars now then have to come up with something Islamically to prove that, right?
So what I basically you also have to think about the consequence. So let's say you do it now.
Right.
Let's say somebody else wants to follow that model, but they don't have the same level of intention or same, they just want to automate it and like class, they just want to be done with it. You have that interaction, but they don't really genuinely care.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's say more people do it. There's going to be like another wave of TikTok-ish kind of fad where people are doing this, but they're not. So now what you did, let's say somebody else picked up on it. I don't know if you're going to disclose. Like, hey, you could do it this way. Who knows? So, but now you're going to have this whole generation of people trying to do the same thing, and they're going to. So they're going more and more away from what is more organic, and
Yeah.
being there with your neighbor, helping your neighbor, being kind to your neighbor or your family first, and then neighbor. That whole concept. And should we really be promoting that in Islam, or should we be promoting more of organic, or more effort, putting more effort in, basically?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that you have to travel like 5,000 miles or 10,000 buy a plane ticket in this recession with inflated prices, and you have to like go there and I don't know help wash the clothes or something, do the laundry.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem practical.
Definitely. But it's still keeping that organic interaction between them. I get what you mean. But again, I still think it's good that scholars come up with something to answer it, right? And actually come with proofs. Because right now, I don't want to say you're talking from your desires, but you're talking from your akal. Like you're talking from logic, right? But the problem is that Islam, I don't want to say Islam is a logical religion, but the religious status and religious understanding is based on fact, right? So that's why I think it's important that scholars should start to review this, right? And start to try at least beat the race with
Keep up with the times.
keep up with the times, like, and not in like the sense of an innovation, but like in the sense of introducing regulations that are supported by Islam to do so, and that's what's important.
Basically, the assessment that I just made, they just scholars, and I'm not a scholar, so it would be better qualified for a scholar to do that analysis and look deep into it, and maybe they have some hadith background and tafsir background, and they could give a better answer
Explanation.
than I did. Yeah.
Exactly. That's why it's important to bring up the scars. And also, I know I mentioned that these things can be used as a weapon. Do you think that that we should also bring to the scholars that what if someone is trying to make up a model for giving accurate fatwas, in the sense that like we can make all the general stuff, like all the general questions in a database of sorts, sort of like ChatGPT, but it gives you specific fatwas, right? Also, another thing that we should bring up to scholars, again, it's like, I know that it's, for me, I personally think it's a stupid idea, and I know you can agree that it's not a really good idea, and it's not organic, right? I'm just saying is that scholars, this explanation from a scholar should still exist outside of what we're talking about here, right? Because it's easy for us as engineers, of course, to use logic and say, this doesn't make sense. This shouldn't. But the thing is this is the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we need to actually be coming with evidences from the religion to prove stuff like this. So I think scholars personally should take a look at these sorts of questions and start trying to at least have a general rough outline that can explain stuff with fatwas. Because I don't want to be disrespectful to scholars and say that their job is easy. Certainly not. But when it's the same questions that they're being asked nowadays, right? It's like I feel like every single thing, every single year, every single season, all the questionnaire, like Islamic questionnaire, muftis and people of knowledge, every single year it's the same few questions that get cycled around. If you remember, it's like every single Ramadan, I always hear, is it halal to brush your teeth? Or is it halal to do this during wudu or to do miswak during Ramadan or something like that? Because Ramadan is coming up in the week, inshallah. May Allah make us be on so screwed to see it. But is that in and after Ramadan, it's the same thing. It's like, okay, guys, make sure you fast your 6 days of Shawwal. Is that what? Shaban, yeah. As I mentioned, fast these 6 days because they're, thing. And it's like, obviously, they're doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes. But, I think that these hard questions should be asked and answered, right? It's interesting to see that these very basic questions of knowledge, because people aren't learning them themselves or reading the books like very bare minimum, or even doing their own research a bit, right? And they're coming up and worrying about and asking these things. But that's what I personally believe that should be.
What do you think, Victor? Do you think we can get a mufti on here and
inshallah
to answer one of these questions?
Inshallah, I will try my best to find someone. I will try to find my best. And if you guys have anyone interested, make sure to message them and reach them out and then send them my way. And we'll inshallah have it in a future episode. So that sums up the episode for today. I'm Big Turk, and I'm here with I've been with Big Bang. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.